It's hard for me to address whether or not I think she should have been fired. I think that she made a really bad mistake. If you're a reporter or an editor and you're supposed to be impartial, that impartiality extends to social media. When you're talking about your personal brand, it's easy to think, well, personal means my personal opinions, my personal self, my personal choices. No, it's your professional self that you're putting out there. It's just you're tying everything, you're tying your work reputation back to you as a person instead of to the company you're working for. So an editor in Middle Eastern news should not have said one way or another. You can commemorate the passing in some other way, leave your opinion out of it. But this goes back to the whole river of information thing. It's easy to say, oh, it's a little tweet, no one's going to notice. I only have 12 followers, I only have 1,200 followers, whatever. Once it's out there, it's out there. Even if you delete it, it's out there. If someone has retweeted it, if someone has replied to it, there's a link that goes to a page that has it on there and that can be published anywhere, again, anytime. So you have to be especially careful with what, not just personal information and privacy issues, but also your professional reputation, because you're putting that out there every time you interact with your community.
You know, I absolutely think she should have been fired, no question. And the reason why is because one of the things you have to remember is that even, unless you operate your own business and you're wholly responsible for your own brand, your own business, there are a series of concentric circles that surround you and you're sort of in the middle. CNN is a bigger brand than she is. And so she's tweeting her personal stuff inside the concentric circles of CNN. And the other thing that you've seen is that if they didn't do what they did and fire her, CNN would have been the one called to the mat.
Right.
So this is the point I was making earlier about how seriously you have to take what you're putting out into the river or on your Facebook page, depending upon who it is that you are responsible for representing. Since I own my own business, I get called to the mat by my business partners and my husband, depending upon what I say on air or what I tweet or whatever else. But other than that, it's just business deals that would blow up. But if you're employed by somebody, you've got to keep this in mind, because if they see you tweeting about something, it's your own private business. The way the media is these days, the next thing you know, if you're doing something like throwing a graduation party for your underage high school kid and serving beers and you're tweeting about it, the news trucks will be out front and now your employer's involved. So just keep that in mind.
Right. And Ted, you oversee the Twitter account at New England Cable News. And I know we spoke on the phone and I specifically asked you, reporters can go out and tweet whatever they want, and how do you monitor?
I mean, I guess, there's a, you've got to treat, reporters as professionals. I mean, they understand in their daily work on television or in print that, what they're saying is not just a reflection of them individually, but it's also part of the wider reputation of the company. And I think that, you would ask, well, do you pre-approve tweets? And one, it's not practical, because by the time you get through that process, the whole nature of Twitter is that it's fast-paced, and 6 hours after the fact, when I get out of a meeting and get a chance to approve something, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But you've got to, I've got the same level of trust for them on Twitter as I do for them on air, and they've earned that from me, and they've earned that from NECN, but they've also got a responsibility to live up to that as well. So.
I mean, I guess just, for me, when I'm tweeting, I'm, like Lylah said, I'm just always very conscious not to give my opinions about a lot of things, especially things that I'm covering. You just have to present it in an impartial way, and that is so important. Even, when I'm just talking about, or thinking to myself about certain products, I usually don't say, oh, I love Banana Republic. I just don't do that, even though it's not a Boston-based company. So I'm just very, very, very aware of that as a reporter.
And the challenge is, it's a fine line, because I think that part of what makes a lot of social media so appealing, and part of what it can do to expand a media brand, is it gives you a chance to express a little bit different personality, represent content in different ways, but you have to balance that with being that's true for us, that's true for anybody out there. You're going to be smart about the message that you're sending out.
So what we're hearing here is, we have 3 panelists that work for a media outlet. We really have to be careful. And Mel was asking who here is working for a company, who's here to learn more so that they can promote the company. Then what these 3 panelists, Lisa and Ted and Lylah, have been talking about is how to be careful. Mel, you don't have to worry as much because it's really your brand. And we want to get into that because there are a lot of people here tonight that want to talk about how do I self-promote? How do I get myself out there? But let me just ask you, you don't have to, TTK doesn't ever, they don't care.
They made me sign something, but given what my colleagues say on air, I'm not that worried about it.
Exactly, yeah. So, might not always be whether you're working for me or
And
media
plus,
or
the other thing in my business is, if you get fired, it's great publicity.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, oh, Mel Robbins got fired for offending somebody.
Right.
Oh, let's that'll drive ratings.
Right.
So
The old Chase Severn, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get into personal branding because, and I know a lot of what all of you have talked about when we've chatted on the phone is that not only are you getting a message across that has to do with your work and your writing and the news that you're covering and so forth, or issues, but it also puts out something about you as an individual. And that is the whole personal branding that we want to really focus on now. And one of the big stories in the last week was LeBron James. Did he over-promote himself? There's been a lot of controversy on this, and we thought it was really a great example of somebody who maybe went over the top in self-promoting. And here's the other part of this. When we get done talking about him, which will take 5 minutes, what do we think about somebody who's so obviously a self-promoter? Do we like them? Do we want to be with them? How do we feel about that? So let's talk a little bit about LeBron. And did his brand suffer? Maybe not.
I'm guessing his fans were really happy with it. I'm guessing his sponsors were really happy with it. I'm deeply ambivalent about sports, so I didn't really care. And it didn't make me want to care. In fact, it made me wonder, why is this worth an hour on any cable network, even a sports one? How does it take an hour to say Miami? It doesn't. So for me, that was too much. Does it make me like him? Does it make me want to be with him? Not really. If it was something I cared about, I'd probably seek out more information. I don't feel like it needs to be in my face all the time. So I'd say it was over the top.
Ted?
I'm passionate about sports, and I admit that I actually avoided it. But
And why? Why? Because he was so obviously self-promoting?
Yeah, I get cranky about those things. No, wait, I'll blame the baby. How's that? That way I can stay kind of confrontational on that. No, I mean, for me, it was over the top, and that's for me personally, and I think I even tweeted about it at risk of my professional reputation. But I'm okay with that. I think that from a branding standpoint, though, the reality is that millions of people watched it, and millions of people who didn't watch it talked about it, and the difference between kind of the fact of the matter is he's also quite a product to sell. I mean, LeBron James wouldn't have gotten the attention he did if he just said, I'm a mediocre basketball player who scores 3 or 4 points a game, and I'm going to Miami. Brian Scalabrine is not going to probably be able to get an hour-long special on ESPN when he figures out where he's going next. But because he is a product that has great value, and he is his product. And so on that level, he was doing a great job of pushing his personal brand forward, and sold thousands of season tickets, and there's going to be millions of dollars in new merchandise being sold. And
Right.
you look at the estimates of what he may mean to the Miami area, and people saying, he could be $1 billion investment for that team.